Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Sam Parker, offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Davenport University, located right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yes, I am a West Michigan guy. Yes, I do love West Michigan, and I'm so grateful to be here. And I absolutely love. I've GA'd at Davenport when we didn't have a football season. It's a startup program, and year zero was 2015. So it felt like being a GA on steroids because it's 115 freshmen, and I remember my first day I was fitting helmets, like, and then going between coaching running backs to coaching tight ends to assisting with the offensive line, and I think running the one-on-ones, and so to young coaches watching this, go and sign up to be a GA, a volunteer, or whatever. You're not going to make any money. You're going to be living on a couch, and you will fondly be looking back at that in 10, 15 years as one of the greatest experiences of your life. And for me, I'm fortunate enough to come back here and be in a completely new role and see how far this program has gone. I guess that was a wild tangent introduction considering what we're going over today. So today I wanted to go through because the last one that I just did was like gap scheme variations, and if you're a new coach, you might be like, what the heck is a scheme to variations to plays and this, that, and the other. And so I'm going to go through that right now with you, okay? So we have what's known as, I guess your system. Let's start with that. What system is your offense? Are you a West Coast? Are you an air raid? Are you a T, a Delaware T, a wing T, a flex bone, a shotgun, a spread? There's whatever your system is, and it can be completely original, completely new. I look at some of the great minds and see some of when I see Georgia Tech, it's like, what is this? It's not single wing. They're spreading out. There's tons of different systems that you can match, but what one is your program? And that's the key here, okay? So it all starts with your system, how you call a play, the demeanor, the mentality, everything that's a part of the system. Because again, I will always go back to, I am teaching a system to guys. I am not teaching plays, okay? I'm not teaching scheme, I'm teaching a system, because that's where it all has to come back to. Now, under your system, you're gonna have different schemes. And a scheme is a broad term to what's going on in the field, okay? So you might have a zone, a screen. You got your screen scheme, and you're quick for your quick pass game, okay? So you've got different schemes going through there, and you're trying to make it like, okay, so now that I got my zone scheme, what zone plays am I going to run? And I'm going to go through this in the next step here, but you got inside zone, tight zone, wide zone, mid zone, outside zone. What else is there? I mean, duo that you could factor in, right? Those are your different plays, okay? And so under zone, we're going to have inside zone, and we're going to have outside zone. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. All right? That's all I want to do here. I want a good inside zone. I want a good outside zone. And let me also add over here. Yeah, because we just went over gap scheme. All right? So yeah, and then under my gap scheme, I want to have power and buck sweep. So now, those are my plays, okay? And now I have my variations and how you get to them. So they could be its own play call. So if I'm calling inside zone carpet, maybe when I'm like reading the C gap, that's rug. And when we're trapping somebody in the backfield, that's mat. And then, if I'm cutting somebody off, that's hardwood floor, whatever, okay? But the next thing that's coming down through here is going to be your variation. So I want to have a zone read. I want to have an add zone, which I'm cutting somebody off in the backfield. And I want to have split zone. So now as my layers go, I have my system here, which at Davenport, we run the Rage offense. We are a Rage system offense. That stands for recognize and get them. A recognition, aggressive attacking offense put on the precedent of positionless players, multi-formation, multi-motion, high-octane, butane, up your you-know-what. So that's our system, okay? And now underneath is our scheme, and then our plays, and then our variations. And then there's one more factor in which kind of lies over here, but it's your concepts, okay? And your concepts and conceptually should always be like kind of this overlap, okay? So like, for example, we're gonna run, let's say we're running inside zone, or let's take, for example, add zone, all right? So we're running add zone, so we got our O-line zoning off here, and add zone just has our Y adding to the count. All right, so we're just going to add into here. Well, conceptually, this is the same block that we have on power. And if I add somebody else to it, and now they're both doing the same thing, well, this concept here is very much power from those two guys. A concept for me, and again, I don't know what, Pat Shurmur or these brilliant offensive coordinators of years past would say, and how they identify stuff. This is just how I do it, okay? This is how it makes sense to me and how I'm able to maximize the most out of what I've got and not be so stuck and so rigid that I'm not flexible to adapt with the times, adapt to the opponent, and adapt in the fourth quarter when we need to make an adjustment. And it's not one out of fear, but it's one out of aggression in a huge play, right? So concept, it's anytime that a couple of guys, and I say a couple because I usually think it's got to be two or more, right? If it's something specific on a play, like, yeah, you're going to have that where, like, obviously your wide receivers are blocking outside, that doesn't mean that, well, I guess conceptually, perimeter blocking. Really digging myself in the weeds here. But conceptually, okay? Conceptually, in the backfield, this is our mid-zone mesh here. That's for mid-zone. Concept-wise, conceptually, mid-zone mesh. But we love doing that for our GT and reading. So we're taking two different things, right? We have our concept and our scheme with GT, but we're adding it conceptually with our mid-zone mesh. So conceptually, what that should mean and be able to do for these plays and scheme and all that stuff should be able to dictate and make it easier to not be adding, 35 schemes, right? You shouldn't be so, narrowed down that all these schemes are something else. And to be honest with you guys, as I've learned, in the short time of being an offensive coordinator, like it needs to make sense for the players. It needs to make sense for the players. We put in a scheme this spring. I mean, it took us a minute to figure it out, but we didn't put in a scheme. We made a play from a scheme, okay? And this play was not totally effective and seemed to be doing a little too much. So what did we do? We said we're getting rid of that play, but we're introducing this new scheme, and it's just like that play except X, Y, and Z. So sometimes it's not always good, like, to add a play underneath here. So when do you know when to add a scheme or change something? Well, it's when the rules don't align or the mentality changes, okay? Like, you might be looking at your guys and say, you know, like our buck sweep, you know, we're coming off the ball too physical. We're making it match too close to power. We're losing the block too quickly. Okay, so what are we going to do? Let's make it its own different scheme. Let's remove buck sweep and add it out to here. So that's no longer happening. We're going to be over here. And now a part of our scheme, we've got buck sweep. Right? And now you're kind of piecing that together. And now when you get to your plays, we should be saying, hey, when we teach inside zone does not change. We are not changing inside zone based on the front they're doing. We're not changing anything that we're doing until we get to variations. And again, conceptually, when you land a play, you like, outside of some of these variations that I deem, and I'm like, okay, that's so simple. Absolutely, right? Absolutely, I think it takes nothing to make, you know, split zone, you know, somebody coming across, or we're going to add two big on big blocks with inside zone. Conceptually, that's pretty easy to do, and yeah, let's make it a variation. But when you're doing a wholesale change and you start running, you know, let's say power, and you're now telling your double team, like, hey, you're going to go chase this guy out of there. Or you're telling your center, hey, if he's in a 3 technique, cut him loose and run this way. Like, that's what you don't want to do. You should never be so specific based on what they're doing that it's going to change what you're doing offensively and with your scheme, okay? So, again, you have your system in which this whole umbrella should follow and work with. You should not put in a play that doesn't align with your system. If you are an air raid team, you should not be, as an offensive line coach or a run game coordinator or an offensive coordinator, be thinking like, oh, okay, we need to add in, you know, I guess buck sweep is a pretty good one to not add in. And then if you are going to and make that investment, how is it going to relate to the rest of your system? Because I can tell you, for us, everything that works under scheme relates back to one another. That's why we maximize these concepts. I think if you think of the Venn diagram, right? A Venn diagram of plays is what you want to see. So, you know, we're going to have kick out here. We have our inside zone here. Well, now that's split zone. But we also can have that kick out be with gap scheme, in which now that's power. And I'm talking from the Y, kick out with our Y/sniffer. All right, so now you kind of can piece, okay, now we got more concepts that relate. The more that you can overlap your concepts, the better it is with your system, because now you guys are maximizing repping these techniques and looks and you know, and all of the nitty gritty of the game. And what you're also doing is you're not booking yourself in a hole where, oh dang, all we've done is the only time that we're kicking out this end is with our Y and it's inside zone, we can't run inside zone, right? So making sure that you're flexible enough to pull this off with your concepts and be good with the, that overlap, but also that you have this tiered structure, okay? And that this look is kind of like the bucket system. If you get a play, what bucket are you putting this, right? And two, don't be afraid in terms of scheme-wise to have just a, hodgepodge, completely miscellaneous, random, whatever, other, right? That, man, these aren't really relating scheme-wise, but those plays are not going to be your bread and butter and the ones that you're working on most. That's a super specific game planning play, and you're sitting there and you're like, man, this is so good. This fits what we do. This is a perfect play. Our guys would be so good at running this. I know we're going to see this front. We could put this in on Tuesday and execute it on Saturday. Yeah, run it. Like gimmicks, uniques, trick plays, absolutely. But do not try to make them and force them into inside zone. And when do you know when they don't align is you come back to conceptually. So if you have to mess with inside zone and how you're blocking it to make that play work, like, hey, we want to run inside zone, but we want to pull our center. That is not inside zone. That's a new play. That may be buck sweep. That may be another scheme, right? And again, I think every program has a scheme area, whether they want to admit it or not, that's just kind of a box of toys that, hey, this is the only time that we're running this and we want to make this work. Your reverses, your draws, could be screens into that. If you're not going to be a heavy screen team and we just want one. So that kind of breaks it down. And again, to review, you have your system, underneath you have your scheme, underneath your scheme you have plays, and then at the end of that you have your variations. And then over here you have your concepts. So I can tell you, like, hey, the concept is buck sweep. The scheme may be buck sweep. The play may be buck sweep. The concept may be buck sweep, right? But you want to use that word because you might have a screen dialed up that, hey, conceptually, this is buck sweep. We're going to have these two guys pulling, but now you two guys are coming out here to go block on the screen. So now our buck sweep and our screen have an overlap of something. And that's, the more you do that, the more difficult it is for the defense to get their indicators and get you lined up. And the more difficult, and I guess too, the more comfortable you guys will be running these plays. Because you're saying to them like, hey, this is a new play going in, but three of you guys are doing the same thing that you would on buck sweep, all right? It's only two guys that are getting out here on the screen. It's much easier to execute and to roll with. So that kind of breaks it down from like a big picture sense on an offense and how, the game kind of works. I do touch on this in the majority of the presentations that are available at coachingshare.com /the lunch pail. Feel free to go and purchase one and study it up with film and, a coach speak and diagrams. But if not, your first time OC, and maybe you're at the middle school level, high school level, doesn't matter. Like, make sure that you have a structure that is, teachable to not only the players, but the coaches on how we call stuff, and the why. I think a big component is the why. I hate the expression of that's not what we do here. Or that we are a blank team, right? And you're gonna hang your hat on one thing, and it should be a very concrete, broad picture. I can tell you this, any year I've ever been a part of a football team or played, coach, whatever, I was gonna be the most physical guy or have the most physical unit or pride myself on being the most physical at whatever I could. Very few years did that happen where I was the most physical unit or part of the most physical unit or the most physical player that I, in a game or whatever. But that's a goal that I wanted to reiterate to everybody on our team and what we do and why we coach the way we coach. And so when we do get into this, this can be a lot and overwhelming for guys and confusing at times, but at the end of the day, I'm always going to be open to ideas and be flexible to get our guys in the best position as possible. And sometimes that means shrinking it down that, hey, the only thing that we need to do is run the outside zone. Let's just get back to outside zone. Okay, great. Can we be physical on outside zone? You betcha. All right. And so as long as it's falling under that umbrella, you're going to be okay. The second that you get into all the cool stuff of, the world of football and all this looks really cute or this is really cool, that's when you're not going to be as effective. So appreciate you guys sitting through. Next one I'm going to go through, I think inside zone. See you in the next one.